Assassin's Creed Origins, the game that changed the paradigm, took a step in new direction, breathed in a new life into a dying series, but at the same time laid the groundwork for its subsequent deterioration. It finds itself almost ubiquitously beloved by the fanbase, a rare occurrence in the Assassin's Creed history, especially praised for its incredible and powerful story, divergent gameplay, revolutionary setting, and even great DLC later down the line. But is this game truly a gem or is it just a lesser failure in a series struggling to attain any sensible level of quality and polish? How does it fare against other games in the genre, or just other games in general? Is it worth time? Let's find out right now. I am typically not an RPG player. I come from a background of real-time strategy and grand strategy simulation gaming. Think of the likes of Age of Empires 2 or the games by Paradox Interactive, like Crusader Kings 3. My first venture into the open world RPG genre was just a few years ago with the great title Horizon Zero Dawn, but after I finished that game, I was left craving for more, and thus I searched for a similar experience. What I got recommended was the Assassin's Creed series, especially AC Origins. Full of excitement and suspense, I dove straight in on hard difficulty. Being a part of the next generation Assassin's Creed games released in 2017, AC Origins revamped not only much of the gameplay, but also the abilities our protagonist, Bayek, possesses. Weapons are subject to a leveling system. There are 7 types of melee weaponry, as well as 4 types of bows, each filling their own niche. The player may have 2 melee and 2 ranged weapons equipped at all times, while also having a torch and a tool, those being sleep darts, fire bombs or poison darts, with smoke being activated in a different way during combat. Since it's possible to change weapon mid-fight, I do not understand why can't the player equip one weapon of each category, maybe with the use of a wheel. I found myself visiting the inventory screen way too often, in the middle of a fight being completely taken out of the rush and moment of excitement. Bayek has further a scout in form of a bird, a falcon if I am correct, called Senu, who helps him scout and highlight enemies or treasures. This is the real MVP of all Bayek playthroughs, I think. Last one of his special abilities is an option to change night to day and vice versa, often utilized in more than a few missions. As for movement, the character can walk, run, crouch, dodge, scale most vertical surfaces and call mount for long distance travel. As already mentioned, AC Origins is an open world RPG game, containing a main storyline taking you all around the quite frankly giant map. On that note, can't wait to get my hands on AC Valhalla. In addition to that, Origins offers a great plethora of side quests to undertake, enemy outposts to clear, and collectibles to collect. While most of the side quests are scarcely memorable, there were a few that stood out to me, whose overarching characteristic was their own small story arc. Just to give an example, in Alexandria the actor gave the player not just one, but a series of 3 side quests all following one upon another, and so we got to see a bit more of him than just the usual 2 cutscenes at the other strong contenders were the converging quest lines in Cyrenaica and Green Mountain regions that were all part of a bigger story. Concerning cutscenes themselves, coming from Horizon games, my bar was not set high, but even the predominantly minor movement of the characters in cutscenes was unsettling to my eye, as the movements felt quite robotic and unnatural, especially the arms. This was also quite surprising to me when I compared it to the overall polish and graphics of the game, which were on a completely another level. A feature I sorely missed in Origins was the ability to see the location of untracked side quests on the map, which made backtracking a bigger issue than it had to be. Bandits and army camps were an omnipresent feature of almost each and every region. There were 3 types of camps based on size, determining the amount of targets to assassinate within, as well as the number of loot crates to find. The camps were tangibly designed with stealth in mind, which made them all the more enjoyable to visit. However, after a certain point the player becomes so overpowered and overgeared that it makes no sense to sneak. other than for fun, and I just began running into the smaller camps without a care in the world, as I knew that even if they all ganged up on me at the same time, I would be alright. To give credit where credit's due, this method did not work in the biggest fortress camps, where even in late game I had to sneak around and use my kit to its full potential to stand a chance. One last thing that proved to be the most annoying part of enemy outposts was their shabby integration into quest lines, as by the time I advanced the quest enough to go save someone from this or that camp, I had most probably already cleared it as I went by, which led to a dry backtracking. When I began to notice this, I started avoiding all the camps until I finished the local side quests, just to be sure to not do the same fort or outpost twice or even thrice. One last, fourth and special type of camp were the elephant arenas. These were by far the most exciting type of enemy outposts. The player was pitted against an elephant, or I heard maybe even two, and each arena's elephant was slightly different, forcing the player to adjust. The rewards for these battles were definitely worthwhile, and stumbling upon one of the elephants always left me excited. Tombs, another type of points of interest, were designed to serve the role of puzzles, with combat taking a back seat. They were mostly found in and around the pyramids, with each one having a unique way of getting to the lost inscription and of course a lot of loot. They added a lot of flavor to the setting and offered a change of pace to the heavily combat-focused game. In any manner, they had their shortcomings too, with the puzzles often relying upon repetitive types of weight-based queries. There was definitely more potential in the whole thing than was realized. Just saying, don't expect anything akin to the cauldrons in Horizon games. Other location-based side content in the game can be divided into four categories. The most basic of these were the sync points, where the player just had to climb upon an elevated spot and sync the game, which made your eagle vision, a form of scouting, reach and see slightly further, while also revealing nearby locations and allowing fast travel to that particular sync spot. This was accompanied by a short animation of a panorama of the surrounding landscape. There are 78 of these in the game, which turned into quite the chore, as I did not use fast travel anyway to stay immersed in the game and stay away from loading screens, even though in this case they were one of the best loading screens I've seen, being able to move with your character back while the game was loading. Second type of locations were the arenas. There are only 3 of them in the whole game world, 2 for fighting and 1 for chariot racing. The fighting arenas, in the style of Colosseum, consisted of multiple boss fights ascending in difficulty, preceded by a few waves of common enemies. What really turned me off these, and I found really jarring, was the fact that the player could not take their hard-earned weapons into these fights and was relegated to fighting with flavorless weapons set by the particular challenge round. The boss fights, in and of themselves, were the high point of these arenas, especially the ones in Cyrene. In my playthrough I delved only slightly into the Hippodrome, based on the Circus Maximus in Rome, which was the third arena in the game. The races were challenging enough, where player had to compete in a chariot race, requiring the player to grasp and utilize all the concepts of the race. Nevertheless, it still felt like a minigame without providing a meaningful contribution to player progress, story, or the game world. Collectibles were definitely my favorite part of this filler content. They came in 2 forms, those being the papyrus scrolls leading to a treasure, of which there were 25, and my absolute favorite, the hermit spots. There were only 5 of them on the map, found mostly in far-flung reaches of it. The activity consisted of finding one of these, then searching for a red blanket to sit on, then sitting there and taking in the landscape, which was most of the time gorgeous. There were always a few flavor scrolls lying around, which when read added to the location's immersion immensely. To touch a bit more on the papyrus scrolls, they came to be mostly found in temples and administrative buildings. The location they alluded to could have been at the other side of the map, the scrolls being just helpful enough to reliably find the treasure after a minute of hardcore brainstorming. The treasures were more often than not weapons of legendary quality, making the whole process feel worth the extra effort. Lastly, and definitely the leastly, there were the chest looting locations found underwater or just anywhere where the dev team felt the points of interest were too far apart. They offered minimal flavor, almost no challenge, and the gameplay loop created was as barebones as they get. The player gets to a location, scans it with the bird scout, finds chests, loots them, leaves. No juice, no sauce, nothing. I think you might get a feeling I was not a big fan of these, and you might be right. To add insult to injury, loot box locations were the most common by far, really honing in on that filler content feeling, from which many Assassin's Creed games suffer nowadays. Assassin's Creed Origins takes place in ancient Egypt. Well, not that ancient Egypt, it's the Egypt of the Hellenic era, following the conquest of Alexander the Great in the Diadochi Wars between his generals after his death in 323 BCE. Ptolemy, one of those generals, seizes Egypt and part of the Levant. His Ptolemaic dynasty oversees a gradual intellectual Hellenification of the Nile River basin, giving opportunities for scientific advance while at the same time suppressing local Egyptian traditions, pantheon, and relegating the language to the speech of the common folk, not that of government. The player gets to experience this torn world in its last throes under the reign of Ptolemy XIV and subsequently Cleopatra before the break of the millennium. The game furthermore tries to portray massive swaths of Egypt and also the Roman region of Cyrenaica in the far west. In this effort there arise many flaws with the map, which a more avid fan of geography would have little problem pointing out, and which would make him triggered in a subtle but persevering way. Just to give a few examples, the region of Cyrenaica is a part of land that juts out to the sea, by which it is surrounded in the west, with its main city, Cyrene, crowning the northern tip of this landmass. However, in the game, the region is portrayed as a further extension of the mostly horizontal coastline. I could understand that, as the historical region itself did truly stretch this far, but the location of the city of Cyrene is then at least 400 kilometers off. One other thing that caught my eye was how lopsided the in-game Nile River delta was, leaning heavily to its western side in the direction of Alexandria, while historically being quite evenly fan-shaped and thus lacking the eastern flank in its portrayal. The distance between Siwa and the delta was greatly diminished too, making me question why didn't the developers choose some other oasis closer to the central Nile that would serve the same purpose story-wise but also make sense geographically. On a more positive note, there were elements that I found educational and greatly appreciated, such as the Lake Mariodis, now just a small pond, or the addition of bare desert regions to the game to make the feeling of being surrounded by endless desert come to life. The towns and ruined temples were full of character, perfectly fitting into the conceived world. As prior mentioned, the world was so immersive that I almost completely forwent the fast travel option, rather planning my trip accordingly to visit all the locations in an orderly and most efficient manner, while also being able to witness the breathtaking landscapes as I found myself scrambling for the screenshot button at more than a few occasions. So all in all, one of the best built worlds in gaming. I gotta admit, I'm not a big story guy. I much more appreciate when the story is told through the player actions and the environment, like in the niche game you maybe may have heard of, Hollow Knight. In Origins they definitely achieve this to some degree. The world itself is run down, pointing towards former glory. Greeks and Romans fit the role of foreign oppressors. The player finds themselves in control of Bayek, the last magi of Egypt, hailing from a distant oasis of Siwa, which mostly escaped the eye of Hellenizators. The main story focuses on the revenge for the death of Bayek's son, in the process of which a whole secret organization of mighty puppeteers steering the world from shadows known as the Order of the Ancients emerges. Most main quests lie in uncovering who a figure known under a certain nickname, such as the Scarab, Hyena or Hippo, is and then assassinating them. Bayek's former wife Aya, a loyal servant of Queen Cleopatra, offers us the second major pillar of the story, the fight for the control of Egypt between Ptolemy, Cleopatra, and the Romans. The missions do a great work of taking the player to many regions, and each feels fresh and unique, with even naval interludes sprinkled in. Lastly, there is a parallel narrative in the modern day that is quite simple and straightforward, however, at least for me, very engaging, and as this was my first AC game, I was left in disbelief when I first got out of the Animus and read every single file on Layla's, the modern-day protagonist's, computer. Overall, the story is enjoyable, although nothing to really write home about. The complete AC Origins not only offers a great main game, but also 2 DLCs whose reviews on Steam tell the whole tale, being graded as mostly, even to very positive. The first one, dubbed the Hidden One, takes place a few years after the end of the main game, and on the coast of Sinai Peninsula. It offers almost everything the main game does, but just smaller. The main quest is also comparable to the main game, consisting of assassinating a few individuals as a reaction to some of Bayek's adherents being murdered. It also expands upon the lore of the world in new and exciting ways, which is greatly represented by the shadows of the Scarab that hunt you in this region. This DLC definitely did not break any new ground, but stuck to what worked and therefore was able to garner its success without major hiccup. The second DLC is not just the more beloved one, the bigger one, the more innovative one, but also one of the most controversial pieces of Assassin's Creed content, marking a major turning point in the series' focus and limits. Bearing the name The Curse of the Pharaohs, it takes place in and around Thebes and the Valley of Kings upriver from the main map. The city and surrounding countryside have been stricken by a curse, making the long-dead pharaohs return and wreak havoc upon the people. It's caused by an artifact that someone possesses. Bayek needs to track this person down and retrieve the artifact. In process, the player visits 4 mythological dimensions and confronts each of the problematic pharaohs in a boss fight. Now, with the explanation out of the way, you can clearly see the difference in overall vibe with this one. The historical plausibility of the story is equal to 0. It's almost purely founded in mythology, offering a deeper dive into the old Egyptian traditions and beliefs as they manifest in the dimensions. The story is quite linear, but despite this feels fresh and concepts explored within have not been dealt with in the game. The map is as always very flavorful, with my only criticism being that I could not see all the maps at once but had to look into each dimensional map individually, making the process of backtracking and checking if everything was completed a bit more arduous. Also, the new puzzles in the aforementioned dimensions were way too difficult, and I admit to using internet guides to complete them. This DLC overall steered away from the at least mildly historically plausible to a dimension literally of complete fiction, which made many fans angry, but also lured in a new potential customers and fan base that was not there before. In process of researching for this video, I completed all the content for AC Origins as well as all the achievements for the game. I went to every single location and cleared the whole map. I was definitely not left disappointed, quite the opposite. In the past I have heard much criticism pointed at the whole Assassin's Creed series, but from my first experience with it, I must admit I was pleasantly surprised. I will continue my Assassin's Creed journey with the other open world AC games, which I am gladly looking forward to. But as for Origins, it has its cons, but the pros outweigh them to a point of making the game a certified masterpiece in immersion. The settings, map, story and combat are all its strong points. Now I will place Origins on a tier list, where I will be placing all the games I will review in the future, expanding and filling it out with all the games I've played and will play. I will be placing AC Origins in the A tier, as even though it's a great game, it definitely has its share of flaws that could have been further improved upon. As for me, you can expect more structured reviews like this one in the future, as well as maybe some other side content sprinkled in here and there. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. If you like the video, leave a like, and if you have some opinions, leave a comment, I'll read them. Thank you if you made it this far, have a nice one and see you next time. Bye.